Hey everybody, I'm going to start a new series on marriages. But first, I'm going to talk about communication because, as they say, communication is the key to a successful relationship. Two types of communication: there's nonverbal and verbal. Verbal communication is literally me right now talking to a camera, pretending like I'm talking to a whole bunch of people, hoping that they're actually watching this video. Nonverbal communication is the weird facial expressions I'm making and other nervous behaviors I'm doing as I'm making this video. Uh, Nonverbal communication makes up about 80% of all communication. That's some estimates. Anyway, good example of how communication works, though, would be like this. My uncle had this story once where, very nice guy, very hardworking, responsible person, is a dentist in Texas, and he said something to a patient once. He said, "Bless your heart." And he really meant it. He was really concerned for the patient. The patient was having a bad day. But the patient got really offended. And the patient's response was, "Don't ever say that to me again." My uncle was very taken aback by that because he intended it as a statement of compassion, but his patient interpreted it as a statement of condescension. So what's the difference there? Well, what goes into communication is kind of five parts. First of all, the message itself. In this case, bless your heart, and there's an intention behind that message. And then there is that message is sent by the sender. In this case, my uncle. Then you have the receiver, the patient in this case, who heard him say, "Bless your heart." And then she interpreted the message and gave her feedback. But she interpreted that message through the lens of interference. In her mind, it was a condescending message. And in his mind, it was intended to be a very compassionate message. And that is what causes a lot of miscommunication. So the five parts are sender, receiver, message, interference, and feedback. Now, when she gave the feedback, my uncle responded with clarification. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. It just sounded like you were having a bad day, and I really just wish you well, and I'm really sorry you're having a bad day." And she apologized or something to that nature, and they were able to move on. Now, in marriages, this kind of thing happens all the time. You'll see this happen with people initiating sexual contact or intimacy or telling somebody they love them or asking them to do something. It can be interpreted as a criticism when it's really not intended to be that. And couples that have those problems, it can spiral. Things can really cycle into a really nasty fight, and you get lost in it and have no idea how you ended up here. Now, what we do in couples counseling is we try to address that. We try to sit couples down and help them communicate. And it's not just couples, it'll extend to families too, where people feel like their kids aren't understanding or being disrespectful when kids are really trying to understand things. So we try to fix a lot of that when we do family therapy. And it's tough because the interference baggage can go really deep and go all the way back to the family of origin and how you were raised. So just be careful when you're out there talking to each other, that you're very clear. And if you see anything, if you get any responses or feedback that doesn't line up, take that time to reassure and clarify what you meant. Take care, everybody.